Okay, let's get into this. We're looking at some source material today that's, well, it's become a real touchstone, hasn't it? Almost the go-to source for trying to figure out relationship dynamics for, gosh, decades now.
That's right. We're pulling some key excerpts from John Gray's Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, a classic.
Absolutely. And the whole hook, that famous metaphor, men and women being from different planets, it's really just a way to talk about what Gray sees as these, really fundamental differences.
Yeah, differences in how we communicate, what we actually need from each other, how we handle stress, things that can cause a lot of friction if you don't get it.
And the starting point, right there in the material, seems to be this very human thing we do. We expect our partner to think like us, react like us.
Exactly. We assume they're on the same planet,
Mm.
and when they're not, well, that's where the misunderstandings and the hurt feelings creep in. It's like a fundamental disconnect.
So our mission here is to dig into these excerpts, go beyond the catchy title, and pull out the really practical stuff, the insights that might actually help you navigate those differences better.
Right. And the fact that this book has stayed so popular for so long, it, it really shows how much people are looking for that kind of practical understanding. They want to figure this stuff out.
So if expecting your partner to be just like you is the root problem, where does that show up first, according to Gray?
Well, one of the big ones, right off the bat in chapter 2, is how we deal with problems. This leads straight into that famous idea of men as Mr. Fix-It.
Ah, yes, Mr. Fix-It.
The idea is when a woman shares a problem, a man's instinct, almost like a reflex, is to jump in with solutions. He thinks he's being helpful, right? That's his job. Fix it, make it better.
And the book has that really clear example, Tom and Mary. She comes home, she's stressed about work, forgot to call her aunt, just venting.
Yeah, just needs to talk about how awful her day was.
And Tom immediately goes into, well, just quit the job. Or don't worry about your aunt. Don't listen to those people. You worry too much. Solution, solution, solution.
Right. And what's the result? Mary feels worse. She feels like he didn't hear her at all.
Yeah, completely missed the point.
Exactly. The source material frames it like this. His solutions, even though he means well, kind of shut down her feelings. They invalidate them or try to skip over them to get to the fix.
Which is totally different from the Venusian way described in the book.
Totally different. That approach is all about listening, like really listening,
Yeah.
with empathy, trying to understand the feeling underneath the words, not just the problem itself.
And it mentions Tom learning to just say things like, sounds like a rough day. Or even just making acknowledging noises like,
Yeah, those little signals that say, I'm here,
Yeah.
I hear you, without jumping in to solve anything. The source even lists common things men say that fall into that trap, like, oh, you shouldn't worry so much, or it's not that big a deal, or why don't you just...
Right. Trying to change the feeling instead of just acknowledging it.
Exactly. It's framed as an attempt to dismiss the negative feeling, not necessarily out of unkindness, but because that's the Martian fix-it mode kicking in.
Okay, that makes sense. And that leads into another big difference the book talks about how we handle stress itself. Chapter 3, men go to their caves and women talk.
Right. So the model here is stress hits, men tend to pull back, go internal, into the cave, to think things through alone, maybe find that solution, or just, decompress.
Whereas women, according to this model, tend to want to talk it out.
Yeah. And the key thing the book emphasizes is that this talking isn't always about finding a solution. It's often the process of talking that brings relief, getting it all out there.
Like laying out all the problems, past, present, future worries, even stuff you can't fix.
Exactly. It's described as a way to feel less overwhelmed just by verbalizing it. But there's a catch the book points out. If she talks, but doesn't feel really heard, doesn't get that empathy or validation, she might actually talk more or get really wrapped up in other people's problems, still searching for that release she gets from being truly listened to.
Okay. So communication, stress reactions. What about the emotional landscape? The book talks about women's emotions being like waves, right?
Yes, that's another really core concept. The idea that a woman's emotional state isn't static. It naturally goes up and down. She can be feeling great, then sometimes for no obvious reason, her mood dips. She might feel overwhelmed, sad. The book calls this going into her well.
And the really interesting part is that the source presents this dip, this going into the well, not as something wrong that needs fixing.
Exactly. It's framed as a natural, even healthy process, necessary for releasing built-up emotions, for healing, and actually essential for her to be able to swing back up and feel genuinely happy again.
So the trouble comes when the man, the Martian, sees her going down and tries to stop it.
Precisely. He tries to fix the wave. The book uses Bill and Mary. He tries to reason with her, explain why she shouldn't be upset, logically pull her out of the well.
Which, according to Gray, just makes it worse. It stops her from going through that necessary emotional release.
Right. When she's in the well, the source says what she needs is support, empathy, someone to just kind of be there with her emotionally as she goes through it, not trying to yank her out with logic.
And this idea of cycles, it also connects to recurring arguments, doesn't it? The book touches on that.
It does. A man might get frustrated thinking, hey, we solved this last week when she was feeling good. Why is it back? But because of this wave cycle, or because issues might be tied to deeper stuff, they can resurface.
Leading to those impatient lines the book mentions, like, are we doing this again? Or, I've heard all this before.
Yeah. Why do you have so many problems? That kind of thing. Which honestly brings us to maybe one of the most powerful ideas in these excerpts.
Okay.
It's called the 90-10 principle. And it suggests something really profound about why tiny things can cause huge arguments.
90-10. What's the split?
The idea is, when you have a really intense emotional reaction in a relationship argument, maybe about 90% of the intensity of that feeling isn't actually about the thing happening right now.
90%. So where's it coming from?
From the past. Unresolved stuff. Childhood, past relationships, old wounds. Only about 10% of the emotional charge is truly related to the current situation with your partner.
Wow. So it's like the book uses that analogy, right? Poking healthy skin versus poking a sore spot.
Exactly. The current issue is just a poke. But if you've got that old unhealed wound, that same poke triggers way, way more pain.
That's huge for understanding overreactions, yours or your partner's.
It really is. And here's where it gets even more complex, almost paradoxical. The book suggests that feeling safe in a relationship can actually bring this old stuff up.
Wait, feeling safe makes it worse. How does that work?
Well, the safety allows those deeper, maybe painful feelings, shame, fear, insecurity from the past, to finally surface because it feels safe enough for them to come out.
Okay, I see. The safety lets the old wounds open up.
But then, the old fear, the historical fear tied to expressing those vulnerable feelings, makes it incredibly difficult to actually share them with the person providing the safety. So the feelings get blocked or they come out sideways.
Ah, that makes sense. It's a tricky dynamic.
Super tricky. And it leads to a strong warning in the source material against just stuffing everything down to avoid conflict. You know, the couple who supposedly never fought but then got divorced.
Yeah.
Suppressing those well moments, those difficult feelings, it leads to numbness. And eventually that numbness kills the good feelings too. The love just sort of fades.
Okay, so understanding the roots, the communication styles, the emotional waves, the 90-10, how do we translate that into day-to-day interactions? The book talks about hidden needs and making requests, right? The secret reasons we argue.
Exactly. It argues that most arguments aren't really about the surface topic, the money, the chores, whatever. They're battlegrounds for unmet emotional needs deep down.
And it gives examples, like what a man might really need if he's arguing.
Yeah. If he feels criticized, maybe he deeply needs acceptance. If he feels like he's being told how to do things constantly, maybe he needs admiration for his competence. If he feels blamed, maybe encouragement is what he's actually craving.
And for a woman, what are her hidden needs, according to this?
Well, if her partner shuts down, she might need reassurance that he's listening, that he cares. If he tries to explain away her feelings with logic, she probably needs validation, understanding. If he expects her to just be detached and logical all the time, she might need to feel it's okay for her to have feelings, all of them.
That makes sense. It's about digging deeper than the surface complaint. The book also mentions boundaries, right? Learning to express feelings respectfully, but also setting limits.
Yes, that's crucial. It uses that counseling example, Jim and Susan. Susan learns to say things calmly like, I don't like how you're talking to me right now. Please stop yelling or I'm going to leave the room. Or just a simple, no, I can't do that right now. I need to relax.
So saying no isn't rejecting the person.
Not according to this source, no. It's about protecting yourself from burnout and resentment, which ultimately poisons the relationship anyway. It's about sustainable giving.
Okay. Now, speaking of requests, we have to talk about the could you versus would you thing. That's probably one of the most remembered bits from the book.
Oh, definitely. It's fascinating. Gray argues that the phrasing makes a huge difference, especially for men. Asking, could you do X, often lands as a question about his ability.
Like, are you physically capable of taking out the trash?
Exactly. Which can feel like you're questioning his competence or like it's a demand disguised as a question. If you can, you should. It can feel controlling or like you don't appreciate what he does.
Okay, so could you focuses on capability and maybe obligation.
Right. But would you, according to the book, is heard completely differently. It sounds like a genuine request about his willingness, his choice.
Ah, so it gives him the chance to choose to help.
Yes. It lets him step up and be the provider, the hero, the good guy, which taps into that need to feel trusted and capable.
Yeah.
The book uses the marriage proposal analogy, could you marry me? It sounds weirdly conditional, right?
Yeah, funsy.
Whereas,
Oh.
would you marry me is a direct appeal to his will, his commitment.
Okay, I get that distinction, and the source links this sensitivity around requests back to a deeper need men have.
Yes, a deep need to feel accepted as they are. So constantly being asked for more or being asked to change how they do things can feel like criticism, like the woman thinks he's somehow broken or not good enough.
The if it ain't broke, don't fix it Martian motto.
Exactly. A request for change can feel like she thinks he needs fixing.
And there's that story about the author getting milk for his wife.
Oh yeah, the milk story. He's tired, winding down. She asks him to go out for milk. He grumbles a bit.
Which is the key part, right? Her reaction to the grumble.
Totally. She doesn't react to the grumble. She doesn't make him wrong for it. She just accepts his initial reluctance. He goes, gets the milk, starts feeling kind of good about doing it.
And then when he gets back.
Big hug. Genuine appreciation. Not just for the milk, but the whole act. And the source suggests that combination, accepting the initial Martian resistance and appreciating the effort, kind of programmed him. It made helping feel good.
So he'd be more likely to want to do it next time.
Right. It becomes a positive feedback loop.
Yeah.
But it also highlights that women need to understand what men need too. That trust, appreciation, acceptance. Sometimes, the book suggests, a woman's way of showing care.
Like being overly helpful or asking tons of questions before a trip, like in that other example.
Exactly. That might feel like nurturing to her, but it can land as mistrust or nagging to him,
Yeah.
which just fuels that cycle where nobody feels understood or appreciated.
Wow. So both sides can be trying their best, coming from a place of love, but just speaking different languages, needing different things.
That's the core message, really. Different planets, different needs, different ways of showing love.
So wrapping this up, what's the big takeaway for you listening to this?
I think it's that understanding these differences, gray outlines, isn't about putting people in boxes or making excuses for bad behavior. It's more like having a possible translation guide.
Yeah, a framework to see things through, maybe with a bit more empathy.
Right, and maybe even a little bit of humor about our different planetary tendencies. It helps you see why things might be going sideways.
And it definitely hammers home the point that love isn't always easy, right? That summer season doesn't last forever without effort.
No, it takes work. Conscious effort to understand and nurture what your specific partner needs, which might feel unnatural or like hard work sometimes, because it's not your native language.
But recognizing the patterns, the cave, the fix-it urge, the need for validation, gives you a chance, doesn't it? A chance to pause before you react instinctively.
Exactly. Interrupt the cycle before it spirals. It gives you choices.
So here's something to think about. The next time you feel that flash of intense irritation or hurt over something seemingly small your partner does or says, how might remembering that 90-10 principle, the idea that most of the intensity might be old stuff, change how you feel or respond in that exact moment?
Or, on a practical level, thinking about could you versus would you, could consciously shifting how you phrase a simple request actually change the whole dynamic of how it's received and responded to.
Definitely some interesting things to chew on as you navigate your own relationships.